The last line of defense. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the helm of the ESA Archimedes, her eyes fixed on the tactical display that painted a grim picture of humanity's situation. The massive holographic projection showed thousands of Concordat vessels, their angular, crystalline ships arranged in perfect geometric formations that stretched across space like a lethal constellation. 3 weeks ago, the Concordat had emerged from previously unknown space, their fleet moving with terrifying precision. They had decimated the outer colonies with mathematical efficiency, each attack perfectly coordinated, each strike precisely calculated. Humanity's forces had fought back hard, but traditional tactics proved useless against an enemy that seemed to anticipate every standard military response. The Archimedes was different. It was humanity's newest vessel, built in secret using technology that pushed the boundaries of human understanding. The ship's quantum computer core, ARIA, was far more than a simple AI. It was a learning system that could adapt and evolve in real time, and right now, it represented humanity's last hope. Captain, the Concordat fleet is advancing. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez reported from his tactical station. Their formation suggests they're preparing for their standard overwhelming force strategy. Sarah nodded, her expression remaining calm despite the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. How many ships, Marcus? 4,217, Captain. All Concordat heavy cruisers, arranged in their signature tetrahedral attack pattern. The bridge crew maintained their composure, but Sarah could feel the tension in the air. They were the only ship left in this sector of space, standing between the Concordat and Earth itself. The rest of the defense fleet had been systematically destroyed, unable to counter the aliens' perfect coordination and overwhelming numbers. ARIA. Sarah called out to the ship's quantum intelligence, analysis of their attack pattern. The ship's AI responded in its characteristic measured tone. The Concordat fleet maintained strict adherence to mathematical precision in their formations. Their tactics show no variation from previously observed patterns. This suggests a fundamental weakness in their strategic thinking. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Explain. The Concordat's military doctrine appears to be based on perfect execution of predetermined strategies. They have achieved near-perfect coordination, but at the cost of adaptability. They don't improvise. Chief Engineer Dr. Maya Patel spoke up from her station, her hands dancing over the holographic controls as she monitored the ship's experimental systems. Captain, ARIA's quantum core is fully operational. The adaptive defense matrices are ready. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The Concordat's perfectly coordinated fleet was about to encounter something they had never faced before. A ship that could learn and adapt faster than their rigid tactical algorithms could compute. All hands, Sarah announced, her voice carrying through the ship's communication system. This is the captain. You all know what we're facing. The Concordat thinks they have humanity figured out. They believe their perfect formations and coordinated attacks make them invincible. But they've never faced anything like the Archimedes. She paused, looking at each member of her bridge crew. We're about to show them that humanity's greatest strength isn't in our ability to execute perfect plans. It's in our ability to adapt, to think differently, to do the unexpected. Stand by for combat maneuvers. The Concordat fleet continued their advance, their ships moving in perfect synchronization. Their crystalline vessels caught the light of distant stars, creating an eerily beautiful display of coordinated movement. They had never failed to crush an enemy using their overwhelming force doctrine. They had never needed to change their tactics. ARIA. Sarah commanded, initiate quantum defense protocols. Show me what you can do. The ship's quantum core hummed to life, its adaptive algorithms beginning to analyze and predict the Concordat's attack patterns in ways that would have been impossible with conventional computing systems. As the enemy fleet approached, the Archimedes stood ready, a single ship against an empire, about to prove that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't perfect coordination, but the ability to adapt and evolve. The battle that would decide humanity's fate was about to begin, and Captain Sarah Chen intended to show the Concordat that they had made a fatal mistake in assuming that victory always belonged to the largest fleet. Sometimes, one ship with the right technology and the right crew could change everything. The hidden advantage. The first wave of Concordat ships unleashed their attack, thousands of energy beams converging on the Archimedes in a deadly geometric pattern. In any other battle, this would have been the end. No conventional shields could withstand such a perfectly coordinated assault. But the Archimedes wasn't conventional. HFY, engage adaptive shielding, Captain Chen ordered, her voice steady despite the approaching wall of destructive energy. The quantum as response was immediate. The ship's experimental shields flickered to life, but not as a simple barrier. Instead, they manifested as a complex, ever-changing matrix of energy fields that shifted and reformed in microseconds. Dr. Maya Patel's eyes widened as she watched the readings from her engineering station. Captain, HFY's quantum core is processing the attack patterns. The shields are adapting to each incoming beam individually, matching frequency and phase to disperse the energy. The bridge crew watched in amazement as the devastating Concordat attack scattered harmlessly around their ship. Where their enemies expected to see destruction, the Archimedes remained untouched, surrounded by a dance of redirected energy. How is this possible? Lieutenant Rodriguez asked, his tactical display showing impossible readings. Their weapons should have overwhelmed any defense system. Dr. Patel's fingers flew across her console as she explained. The quantum core doesn't just react to attacks, it predicts them. HFY is analyzing the Concordat's attack patterns at the quantum level, calculating probable trajectories before the beams even reach us. The shields adapt before the attacks land. On the main view screen, the Concordat fleet's perfect formation faltered for the first time. Their first volley, which had never failed to destroy a target, had been completely ineffective. HFY, Captain Chen called out, "What are you learning about their attack patterns?" The Concordat's weapon systems operate on a base 12 mathematical sequence, the AI responded. Their targeting algorithms are incredibly precise but fundamentally predictable. Each ship's actions are calculated to complement the others in their formation. They achieve perfect coordination by sacrificing tactical flexibility. Sarah leaned forward in her command chair. And that's their weakness, isn't it? They can't adapt quickly enough to counter our defensive systems. Correct, Captain. Their rigid adherence to predetermined attack patterns makes them vulnerable to adaptive countermeasures. They are attempting to recalculate their approach now, but their decision-making process requires consensus across their entire fleet. The Concordat launched a second attack wave, this time with their ships arranged in a new formation. But HFY was already analyzing and adapting, the Archimedes shields shifting to meet the threat before it arrived. Captain, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, "They're launching fighters. Hundreds of them." Sarah nodded. "They're testing us, trying to overwhelm our defensive systems with smaller, more numerous targets." She turned to Dr. Patel. "Maya, can HFY handle that many individual threats?" The engineer's response was interrupted by HFY itself. "Captain, I have identified a pattern in their fighter deployment. Like their capital ships, the fighters operate on predetermined flight paths. Their movements appear random but follow strict mathematical rules. I am calculating optimal countermeasures now." The space around the Archimedes lit up as hundreds of Concordat fighters approached, their weapons blazing. But instead of trying to block every shot, the ship's adaptive shields began to pulse rhythmically, creating interference patterns that disrupted the fighters' carefully plotted trajectories. "Fascinating," Dr. Patel breathed, watching the data stream across her screens. HFY isn't just defending against their attacks, it's using their own mathematical precision against them. The shield pulses are synchronized to create destructive interference patterns in their formation. The fighter squadron's perfect coordination began to break down as HFY's countermeasures forced them to deviate from their programmed paths. Several fighters collided, unable to adapt quickly enough to the changing conditions. The Concordat's greatest strength is also their greatest weakness, Sarah mused, watching the chaos unfold. They've optimized their military for perfect execution of complex strategies, but they've lost the ability to improvise. Captain, Araya announced, I have completed my analysis of their fleet's command and control structure. The Concordat maintains coordination through a hierarchical network of quantum communication relays. Their ships cannot act independently without breaking their tactical unity. A smile spread across Sarah's face as a plan began to form. So if we could disrupt that network, their perfect coordination would become a liability rather than an advantage, Araya confirmed. However, reaching their command and control nodes would require penetrating deep into their formation. Sarah stood up, her decision made. Then that's exactly what we're going to do. Maya, how quickly can Araya rewrite our shield harmonics? The quantum core can implement changes in nanoseconds, Captain. Whatever you're planning, we can adapt our defenses almost instantly. Good. Sarah turned to address her bridge crew. The Concordat thinks they're testing our defenses, trying to find a weakness, but they're actually giving Araya everything we need to understand their tactical limitations. Now it's time to show them why humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to improvise. She walked to the tactical display, studying the Concordat's formation. Araya, begin calculating a path through their fleet. We're going to give them something their perfect mathematical models could never predict: chaos. The quantum core hummed as it processed the challenge, while the Concordat fleet regrouped for another attack. They had no way of knowing that their perfectly coordinated assault was about to encounter something their rigid tactical doctrine had never prepared them for: a ship that could turn their own precision against them. The desperate gambit. Status report, Captain Chen demanded as the Archimedes engines hummed with barely contained power. The bridge crew worked intently at their stations, preparing for what could either be their greatest triumph or their final moments. Dr. Patel's fingers danced across her engineering console. Quantum core is operating at peak efficiency. Araya has mapped out every possible route through their formation, calculating shield adaptations for each potential attack vector. Their fleet is regrouping, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported from Tactical. They're arranging themselves into what Araya identifies as their absolute defense formation. No ship has ever penetrated it before. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. No ship has ever had what we have. She turned to address the bridge at large. What we're about to attempt goes against every standard naval tactic. The Concordat expects us to either retreat or make a last desperate stand. Instead, we're going to do something completely unexpected. Araya's calm voice filled the bridge. Captain, I have analyzed the Concordat's command structure further. Their rigid hierarchy requires constant communication between all ships. Any disruption to this network would cause cascade failures in their coordination. And that's exactly what we're counting on. Sarah replied. Maya, is the quantum pulse generator ready? The engineer nodded. Yes, Captain. Once we're inside their formation, we can emit a focused quantum pulse that will disrupt their communication network. But we'll have to get very close to their command ship for it to work. Sarah turned to her tactical officer. Marcus, plot us a course through their weakest point. Araya, prepare to implement Protocol Chaos. Protocol Chaos was appropriately named. It was a battle strategy that no human tactician would ever conceive, created by Araya's quantum processing capabilities. Instead of trying to avoid the Concordat's attacks, they would use them. All hands, this is the captain, Sarah announced shipwide. What we're about to attempt has never been done before. We're going to penetrate the heart of the Concordat fleet by turning their own weapons against them. Trust in Araya, trust in your training, and trust in each other. The bridge crew watched as the massive Concordat fleet finished arranging itself into its impenetrable defensive formation. 4,000 ships created a three-dimensional geometric pattern that looked more like a work of abstract art than a military formation. Araya, begin the sequence, Sarah ordered. The quantum as response was immediate. The Archimedes engines flared to life, but instead of charging directly at the enemy fleet, the ship began to move in an erratic pattern that seemed to make no sense. Concordat fleet is responding, Rodriguez reported. They're launching a coordinated attack, exactly as ARIA predicted. Thousands of energy beams lanced out from the alien ships, following their precise mathematical patterns. But instead of trying to dodge them, the Archimedes adaptive shields did something unprecedented. They began to capture and redirect the energy. Maya, status of the shield modifications. Sarah called out. Working perfectly, Captain, Dr. Paddle responded, her voice filled with professional excitement. ARIA is using their own weapon energy to create a cascading series of shield frequencies. The Concordat's targeting systems can't get a lock on us because we're technically in multiple places at once. The bridge crew watched in amazement as their ship seemed to fragment into multiple ghost images, each one drawing fire from different sections of the Concordat fleet. But these weren't mere holographic decoys. They were quantum echoes created by the redirected energy of the aliens' own weapons. The Concordat fleet is showing signs of confusion, ARIA reported. Their tactical doctrine has no protocol for this situation. They are attempting to achieve consensus on a response, but their need for perfect coordination is slowing their decision-making process. Sarah nodded grimly. And that's their fatal flaw. They can't adapt quickly enough, because every ship in their fleet has to agree on the response. Push forward, maximum thrust. The Archimedes surged forward, its quantum-enhanced engines propelling it toward the heart of the enemy formation. The ghost images created by their modified shields multiplied and shifted, creating a dazzling display that confused both sensors and organic observers. Concordat ships are breaking formation, Rodriguez announced, unable to keep the excitement from his voice. Their coordination is starting to break down. They're trying to compensate, Dr. Patel added, reading from her displays. But their attempts to re-establish their perfect geometric patterns are actually making it worse. Their own precision is working against them. Sarah watched as gaps began to appear in the once-perfect Concordat formation. Ships that had never operated independently struggled to deal with a situation their rigid tactical doctrine hadn't prepared them for. Some began to fire wildly, their shots passing harmlessly through quantum ghost images or being absorbed and redirected by the Archimedes adaptive shields. ARIA, time to their command ship. Sarah asked, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. At current speed, we will reach optimal position for the quantum pulse in 7 minutes, Captain. However, the Concordat's command ship is beginning to recognize the threat. They are attempting to reorganize their fleet to protect it. Sarah's expression hardened with determination. Too late. They've spent so long relying on perfect coordination that they've forgotten how to react to the unexpected. Take us in, full speed. It's time to show the Concordat that humanity's greatest strength isn't in our ability to follow plans. It's in our ability to break them. The heart of the storm. The Archimedes dove deeper into the Concordat fleet, moving through the chaos it had created like a swimmer navigating rapids. Around them, the once perfect formation of alien ships had devolved into confusion, their attempts to maintain coordination only adding to the disorder. Multiple impacts on decks 3 through 7. Dr. Paddle reported, her hands flying over her console. Adaptive shields are holding, but ARIA is having to work harder to maintain the quantum ghost images. Captain Chen gripped her command chair as the ship shuddered under another barrage. How much longer can we maintain this strategy? The quantum core is operating at 94% capacity, ARIA responded. However, the Concordat is beginning to adapt their tactics. They are attempting to implement individual ship protocols for the first time in their recorded history. Sarah leaned forward, watching the tactical display intently. They're learning. Maybe too late, but they're learning. Maya, status of the quantum pulse generator. Charged and ready, Captain. But we need to get closer, much closer. The command ship's defensive screens are unlike anything we've seen in their regular vessels. The massive Concordat command ship loomed ahead of them, its crystalline structure gleaming with internal light. Unlike the geometric simplicity of its subordinate vessels, the command ship was a complex lattice of interconnected shapes, each facet pulsing with energy. New contact. Rodriguez called out. The command ship is launching something. I can't identify them. They're not in any known Concordat tactical database. Dark shapes emerged from the command ship's hangar bays, smaller vessels that moved with an organic fluidity that contrasted sharply with the rigid movements of the regular Concordat ships. They're drone ships, Araya announced, its usual calm voice carrying a note of surprise. Fully autonomous units operating independently of the Concordat's command network. This is a significant deviation from their established doctrine. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. They're adapting faster than we expected. The pressure we're putting on their tactical systems is forcing them to innovate. The drone ships accelerated toward the Archimedes, their movements unpredictable and dangerous. Unlike the main fleet, they showed no signs of needing to coordinate their actions with each other. AI analysis. Sarah demanded as the first wave of drones engaged their weapons. The drones appear to be running simplified combat algorithms. They sacrifice the Concordat's usual tactical precision for speed and adaptability. This suggests the command ship contains more advanced combat systems than the rest of their fleet. The bridge rocked as several drone attacks slipped through their defensive screen. Shields holding, Dr. Puddle reported, but ARIA is having to split processing power between maintaining our quantum ghost images and adapting to these new threats. Sarah made a quick decision. Drop the ghost images. Focus all power on direct defense and propulsion. We're done with deception. Now we fight through. The multiple images of the Archimedes vanished, leaving only the real ship surging forward through the storm of combat. The drone ships swarmed around them like angry insects, their weapons creating a web of energy beams trying to box them in. Lieutenant Rodriguez, target those drones. Sarah ordered. Araya, analyze their attack patterns. There has to be a weakness in their programming. The Archimedes weapons came alive, returning fire for the first time since the battle began. Araya's quantum processing allowed their targeting systems to predict the drone's erratic movements, picking them off one by one. Captain, Araya's voice cut through the chaos of battle. I have detected a pattern. The drones may operate independently, but they still receive periodic updates from the command ship. There are microsecond delays in their reactions immediately following these updates. Can we use that? Sarah asked, watching another drone explode under their fire. Yes, by timing our attacks to coincide with their update cycles, we can exploit their momentary vulnerabilities. However, this will require precise timing and will leave us exposed to fire from the main fleet. Dr. Paddle spoke up from her station. Captain, I have an idea. If we can modify the quantum pulse generator to emit low-power pulses at the same frequency as the command ship's update signals, we can disrupt their coordination without revealing our main weapon. Sarah finished. Do it. The engineer's fingers flew across her console, making the necessary adjustments. The quantum pulse generator hummed to life, emitting carefully timed bursts of energy that seemed to confuse the drone ships, making their movements more erratic and predictable. It's working, Rodriguez reported. Drone effectiveness dropped by 40%. We're clearing a path. The Archimedes pressed forward, its weapons blazing as it carved through the swarm of drones. Behind them, the main Concordat fleet was still struggling to reorganize, their attempts to provide supporting fire hampered by the risk of hitting their own drone ships. Distance to command ship? Sarah asked, her eyes fixed on their massive target. 2,000 kilometers in closing, Araya reported. Their main defensive screens are powering up. Captain, I am detecting massive energy readings. The command ship appears to be preparing its own version of our quantum technology. Sarah felt her heart race. The Concordat's command ship wasn't just a coordinate center. It was a testbed for their own adaptive combat systems. The real battle was about to begin, and the fate of humanity would hang on whether their quantum technology could overcome its crystalline counterpart. "All hands, braced for close combat," she announced. "We've fought our way through their fleet. Now we face their best. Maya, charge the main quantum pulse generator. We'll only get one shot at this." The Archimedes bore down on its target, its hull scared but unbroken, its crew ready for the final confrontation. The command ship waited ahead, its crystalline surface now blazing with energy as it prepared to defend itself against the first enemy ever to reach it. Victory through innovation. The space between the Archimedes and the Concordat command ship blazed with energy as two quantum-based technologies clashed for the first time in history. The crystalline vessel's defensive screens rippled with patterns that seemed to defy physics, while the human ship's adaptive shields shifted and flowed like liquid light. "Multiple quantum signatures detected," HFY reported. "The command ship is attempting to match our shield frequencies. Their system is learning." Dr. Patel's eyes widened as she studied her readings. "Their quantum technology is different from ours. While we adapt through prediction and analysis, they're using some kind of crystalline computing matrix. Their entire ship is one massive quantum computer." The command ship's response proved her right. Its surface began to fragment and reshape itself, the crystalline structure flowing like mercury to create new weapon emplacements and defensive configurations. Each blast it fired carried complex quantum signatures designed to pierce the Archimedes' adaptive shields. "Hull breach on Deck 5. Rodriguez called out as one of the attacks got through. "Emergency force fields holding, but our shields are starting to fail under these new attacks." Sarah gripped her command chair tighter. "HFY. Analysis of their attack patterns. There has to be a weakness in their system." "Processing," the AI responded. "Their quantum matrix is incredibly powerful, but it requires perfect crystalline alignment to function. Any disruption to their structure would cascade through their entire system, like breaking a single thread in a spider's web." Sarah mused. "Maya, can we modify our quantum pulse to target their crystalline structure specifically?" The engineer was already making adjustments. "Yes, but we'll need to get much closer. Their outer defensive screens would diffuse the pulse at this range." Another hit rocked the ship. "Shields at 30% and falling," Rodriguez reported. "We can't take much more of this." Sarah stood from her chair, her mind racing through possibilities. The Concordat command ship was proving to be more adaptable than its fleet, but it was still bound by its nature. Its reliance on perfect crystalline structure was both its greatest strength and potentially its fatal weakness. "HFY," she called out, "what would happen if we deliberately destabilized our own quantum core? Created a controlled overload?" There was a pause as the AI calculated. A quantum core overload would create a localized field of quantum instability. This would affect all quantum-based systems in range, including our own shields and the command ship's crystalline matrix. "But it would affect their systems more, wouldn't it?" Sarah pressed. "Their entire ship depends on quantum effects. We only use them for specific systems." "Correct. Their crystalline structure would be significantly more vulnerable to quantum instability. However, initiating such an overload would be incredibly dangerous. We would lose most of our advanced capabilities." Dr. Patel looked up from her station. "Captain, if we do this, we'll be defenseless. The quantum core powers all our adaptive systems." Sarah nodded grimly. "But so will they. Sometimes the best way to win isn't to have better weapons, it's to change the rules of the game entirely." She turned to her tactical officer. "Marcus, plot us a collision course with their command ship." "Captain." Rodriguez's voice was steady despite his surprise. "Not to ram them. To get us close enough that they can't escape the quantum disruption field. Maya, begin quantum core overload sequence. HFY. Calculate the minimum safe distance we'll need to survive the effect." The command ship seemed to sense their intentions. Its attacks intensified, its crystalline surface shifting to create more and more weapon emplacements. But in doing so, it was making itself even more vulnerable to what was coming. Quantum core overload in 30 seconds, Dr. Patil announced. Captain, we'll only have manual controls after this. No adaptive shields, no ARIA. Sometimes the oldest solutions are the best, Sarah replied. Humanity survived a long time without quantum technology. We can do it again for a few minutes. The distance between the ships closed rapidly. The command ship's attacks were becoming desperate, its crystalline structure shifting faster and faster as it tried to find a configuration that could stop them. 10 seconds to overload, Maya counted down. 5, 4, 3. All hands, brace for impact, Sarah shouted. The quantum core's controlled overload released a wave of energy that defied conventional physics. For a moment, reality itself seemed to fluctuate around them. The Archimedes systems went dark, then came back online running on conventional power. But the effect on the command ship was devastating. Its perfect crystalline structure, dependent on quantum-level precision, began to fragment. Cracks appeared in its surface, spreading like lightning through its entire form. The ship's weapons fell silent as its quantum matrix collapsed. Conventional weapons online, Rodriguez reported. Their shields are down, Captain. Their whole ship is coming apart. Sarah watched as the mighty command ship began to break apart, its once beautiful crystalline surface now a web of fractures. Around them, the rest of the Concordat fleet, suddenly cut off from their command and control system, fell into disarray. Open a channel to the command ship, Sarah ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of the alien vessel. The Concordat commander, a crystalline being that seemed to be made of the same material as their ships, faced them with what looked like disbelief. This is Captain Chen of the ES at Archimedes, Sarah announced. Your command ship is critically damaged, and your fleet is in chaos. Surrender now, and we can prevent further loss of life. There was a long moment of silence before the alien responded, its crystalline form shifting in what might have been resignation. We surrender. Never in our history has any force defeated our perfect coordination. How did you achieve this? Sarah allowed herself a small smile. By being imperfect. Humanity's strength isn't in achieving perfection. It's in our ability to adapt, to change, to break the rules when we need to. Sometimes the best way to win isn't to be stronger or more numerous, but to be willing to try something that's never been done before. As the Concordat fleet began powering down their weapons, Sarah looked around at her crew. They were tired, their ship was damaged, but they had achieved what seemed impossible. They had proved that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in having the most advanced technology or the largest fleet. It was in their willingness to innovate, to adapt, and to never give up even when faced with impossible odds. The battle was over. Humanity had won not through overwhelming force, but through innovation, adaptability, and the courage to try the impossible. The Concordat would learn from this defeat, but so would humanity. And the next time some alien force thought Earth would be an easy target, they would remember the story of how a single ship and its crew had brought down an empire.